This is the European edition of Breaking Banks, the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show. We bring you the European unicorns, startups, founders, regulators, and leaders innovating the rapidly evolving fintech scene today. A truly localized podcast with both English and local language content, with some of the world's most well-known hosts and influencers in the fintech sector globally. Join us every week as we explore what makes the European Union a phenomenal proving ground for many of the fastest growing fintech plays in the world today. Okay, let's roll.
Hello and good morning here in Chicago. This is episode number 142 of Breaking Banks Europe. I'm your Breaking Banks Europe co-host, Ajit Tripathi, and with me today I have Yelena Kensborn and Matthias Kroener. So Matthias is, our co-host, but today he is here in the capacity of a guest. So he's going to be speaking for his venture Tradelite Solutions, and Yelena is the CMO of the Quest Hub, which are launching an NFT collection called the Quest Citizens. They operate in the crypto space, and Yelena describes herself as a crypto growth hacker. So I think we're going to learn something about that as well, because GameFi is an exciting field for that. Now, today's episode is about GameFi, and the reason this is so interesting is because in the recent years, the metaverse has been a huge topic for Silicon Valley, and we are seeing more and more of electronic commerce and finance move to the metaverse. What's the metaverse? I think it depends on who you ask. But what we know about the metaverse is that, gamers are closest to it, because gamers live in this virtual environment and they do all of the things that a lot of us will be doing in the future. So it's kind of an evolution of the internet, and GameFi, or this combination of gaming and finance and commerce, right, is what's leading us into this new evolution of the internet that I think everyone is calling the metaverse. So today we're going to be learning from our experts about GameFi, which is, some people interpret it as gamification of finance. Some people talk about games and finance. We will explore all of those. Without, any longer introduction, good morning and good afternoon in Europe. So Yelena, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
All right. So for our experts, back to basics. What's GameFi, and why should we care?
Well, I think the reason why we should care is that it's proven to be a very effective game changer for the whole world. If you look at MetaMask alone, 2 million out of the 10 million users are from the GameFi adopting countries, such as, for example, the Philippines. So 2 out of 10 users have come through MetaMask using GameFi as a tool to make everyday earnings. And that's something that we've never seen before in the crypto industry. We've seen people making more money, we have seen black booms, we have seen downturns, but we've never seen such a big mass adoption in crypto on such a large scale.
But what is it? As in, if you had to write a one bullet point, 2-line definition of GameFi for the average, person on the street, what would it be?
Well, it's an opportunity to earn money while playing games.
Oh, so you're making money while playing games. Matthias, what do you think? What is GameFi? And what are the dimensions of GameFi, and why should we care?
So, following the definition, so to say, if you Google for that, you would see that GameFi abbreviation, just like DeFi, but a decentralized finance, combining it with blockchain technology and the game's user experience, and is operating, so to say, in that gray zone of overlapping markets. Which by itself, at least for me, explains why it is so exciting. It comes along with games, and there are many experts saying that the metaverse, the bridge to the metaverse, is the game, or is the video game, or whatever. And the game itself already is a very positive environment, and Ajit, you're absolutely right. We need to speak about gamification and maybe at a later point. But the game itself is a very secure and very positive and positively reconfirming, motivating environment. So this is why we have 3 billion people. That is the size of the market when we speak about video games. And now combining that and enriching that, just as Yelena said, actually with additional technologies like blockchain that allowed you to offer play-to-earn features and actually functionalities, just makes is maxing it out, so to say. It's allowing you to make even more out of that than just fun. And this is why I think it's extremely exciting and a space you should be operating in, and you should have an eye on at least. Yeah.
So, my son, I have a 12-year-old son, and he spends a lot of money on Roblox. In fact, I'm always trying to, impose sanctions, like a regulator on him to stop him from buying all these digital objects and doing strange things on the Roblox platform. But Roblox has no crypto attached to it. So is blockchain and crypto necessary for GameFi, or can we? I mean, what are people doing in GameFi? Is blockchain and crypto necessary?
Maybe not. Yelena, allow me one sentence for this. Maybe not necessarily. Right? Not necessarily. And some are operating on blockchain in this environment without a clear vision why actually they're doing it. But on the one side, on the other side, we have a lot of, let me say, in the widest sense, digital assets that we can integrate in this kind of game environment that we can make tradable, that we can make create in a way that you can increase the value of it. We can speak about maybe blockchain secured gamer profiles that are delivering a kind of information and maybe an added value for a third party and so on. And there, yes, clearly you have to be in blockchain. If you just take it as a replacement for your game coins, I would say it's easier to have a game coin, right? But if you really want to create an ecosystem in the meaning of the word, actually, with various stakeholders, which is protecting the value of the ecosystem and so on and so forth, blockchain is it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's very well put. And blockchain in itself is kind of like representing that idea of decentralized finance. And why we have seen such a big adoption in what's so-called developing countries, is particularly in Southeast Asia when it comes to GameFi, is purely because of blockchain. Because like previously, if you have a central company, central server that's taking all the profit, well, such as, for example, Roblox, it is up to that company to distribute that fairly. And we are not guaranteed, while with GameFi, you still have the opportunity of decentralized assets. So it's not like all sitting on a server. People can breed different characters. They can swap different characters. This is all like a whole different ecosystem.
Right. So a couple of things on that, right? So just for full disclosure, I'm very pro crypto, and I was hoping that this question would lead to a debate between Matthias and you, Yelena. And I do I'm an advisor to Polygon and have previously worked for Aave, so I'm very close to the entire Web3 space. And but clearly the debate didn't happen, so I'm going to try to create some debate. So it's So certain. So is anyone in fintech or banking doing anything with GameFi yet? I mean, because banks are still not allowed to touch crypto. So how far can we really go in GameFi if the financial institutions are not involved?
If the most bankish person in this video conference may ask, may answer, and not being a banker by heart at least. Well, IG, you know, right? It's let me say the incumbent or the traditional financial services industry is first of all, I would say to the major proportion very crypto averse if we speak about cryptocurrencies. I think in the same time there's an increasing and a strongly increasing understanding regarding the opportunities that blockchain as a technology is providing to maybe create new asset categories, to create maybe more efficient processes, in order to overcome maybe, in order to cut the corner when it comes to even back office centric developments in that technology and so on and so forth, right? So I think this is where we should not underestimate actually the will for innovation on the financial services industry. I will attend a session next in September, actually, from a very, I would say, more like traditional and incumbent asset manager over here in Frankfurt. And it's about digital assets, and it's exactly about the metaverse, and it's exactly about GameFi at the end of the day, right? So, and they have a shareholder conference, and they're going to present some thoughts and ideas about that to their shareholder conference. So, see, this. I would say there is a basic understanding, not with all and everybody, but it's increasing and emerging and increasing. And second, now when we speak about games, I think the financial services industry doesn't like to hear it. The industry itself is more in gambling when it comes to, for instance, options trading and stuff like that, and brokerage. That's what it is on the one side. But on the other side, I think they increasingly understand that video games are an environment where you can encounter or you can meet your future customer and create some whatever kind of entertaining engagement, right? So now it comes to the point to say, okay, once you understood that, have you got a plan to enter into this? And is maybe HSBC on Sandbox one of the answers to this? What happened, I would say, something like 3 or 4 months ago. Well, that's one way. I would say still the offer is very limited to support the banks and insurances actually to move into whatever metaverse might be called.
Well, I totally don't see why, there would be a need for a bank to move into the metaverse or the GameFi industry, because it's clearly been proven that it's functioning quite well without. So
yeah, that wouldn't hinder.
So let's ask a fundamental question, right? What sort of things are people doing in GameFi? What are the examples of applications from a user perspective that you have seen that are interesting?
Well, one of the I work with GameFi projects every day, and one of the sort of interesting points is there is definitely X Infinity that you can breed and rebreed an Axie or a different asset to get to a set a several level. So you can get an asset sort of generating itself and get super strong. Now, this is really interesting because if you take it outside GameFi and you kind of take it like a digital secretary kind of NFT, and you keep on breeding that NFT until that digital secretary gets really good, then you kind of have a really clear advantage in the market, because you can do bots that are so strong. And the use cases for that are showing that people are willing and have been doing it really efficiently. PegXC, for example, at the moment is kind of struggling, but then again, they have proved that actually there is this whole new possibility, the whole new market of horse racing that is just kind of cancelling out the real world cases. And it's you get esports coming along at the same time, and it just keeps you thinking, you keep on wondering, would there be football in 10 years? Would there be regular sport? It's kind of from the business perspective, more efficient to just put it all in GameFi.
Now we have a debate.
Yelena, what you're saying is play to earn gaming is interesting, because play to earn is where there was this whole narrative where a whole bunch of people in Philippines or somewhere else that were called scholars were essentially getting loans from people to start playing a game called Axie Infinity. And in this game, they were able to, buy or sell NFTs or earn some tokens called Smooth Love Potion or SLP tokens. And that was a really big narrative for a while. But obviously, that game isn't doing so well now because a lot of the gamers have left because the token price dropped in value along with the rest of the market. So I think it's not clear if that model was sustainable or not, and there is a whole debate about it. But it was really a great experiment. So that indeed is an excellent example of where they integrated a decentralized exchange right into the game. They created an NFT trading platform into the game. So certain financial type of applications integrated into a gaming experience. So Matthias, what's the other side of this? And more importantly, what are the other applications?
So actually, of course, when setting up Tradelite and our game publishing platform Mobiland, which you can see here, we of course had a very, very close look to what Axie and others are doing, and I think it's fantastic what was created, absolutely outstanding, and many of those applications within the game I find to be really, really absolutely great. What I think, nevertheless, is the challenge for the future to understand and say, okay, what is a value-creating ecosystem then? And then it comes back to the question of ecosystem, right? What is the ecosystem? What are the mechanics of the ecosystem? How can we create an ecosystem that allows, by gameplay, actually to create value and protect value? Right, because Ajit, what you just mentioned, like the drop in the coin price and so on and so forth, that is obviously the opposite of value protection. So we need to think about the ecosystem itself, first of all. Second, I think we need to clearly think about it because there's a lot of BS on the market in the meantime. Because a lot of kind of people, I realized that development to be the opportunity to create a huge fortune within a very short time and a minimum of value proposition, which is very dangerous at the end of the day for the people participating in it. There's a lot of criticism to some of those models saying, okay, yeah, well, it's a nice looking Ponzi scheme, but it's a Ponzi scheme, right? So it's actually looking for the bigger fool next day. Which means, I buy a digital item asset for a low price, and I'm just waiting to sell it to some fool for a higher price, and so on and so forth. And that, all in all, is not a very positive development because that calls the regulator on the plan into the conversation. I remember we had in Singapore already last year a conversation about that. So I think coming back to the original starting point. Technology, games, combining that with play to earn, all in all makes super sense. But I think we need to reiterate that into a next quality level in order to become sustainable, in order to more or less really protect the investors or the participants or the players, so to say, in such an ecosystem and create sustainable game-centric ecosystems that allow all and everybody actually to take positive out of it.
I'm inclined to agree to both sides of this because we are so early and everything is an experiment. Some experiments go well, some experiments go badly, some go well and then go badly, and the other way around. So I think and it's very hard to do risk-free innovation. Otherwise, we would all be banks and there would be no innovation. So what are the other applications? Which brings? Are you seeing asset management applications, banking applications? We talked about trading. What other applications are we seeing in GameFi that are interesting right now? And then, if you can bring those examples to bear, that'd be very useful.
Well, Yelena mentioned, for example, horse races and stuff like that. So we actually, yes, I know, and I don't want to mention names now because now comes my statement to this. There we are in gambling, right? And we need to be very, very careful. Oh, not we here in the call, but they actually need to be very, very careful because they regard this kind of play to earn, nevertheless, gambling mechanisms, and by kind of circumvening central exchanges with peer-to-peer exchanges or decentral exchanges and so on, to be the safe way now for offering off-license, nevertheless, gambling and so on. So this is exactly what I mean, right? So this is, and yes, I also fully agree, Ajit, that all this is in a very early stage. I'm just maybe more or less like listing I would say the requirements and the challenges that we see and the components we have to have an eye on actually when we want to move the whole development, which I find again to be super exciting and absolutely fantastic. When we have the ambition to make that a sustainable development. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
No, I agree. I've said this on more than one episode that in Europe, our instinct tends to be to regulate before we innovate. And, you guys are on the innovation side of this. So how do we bring this space and make it more relevant? So part of the reason, Yelena, you mentioned MetaMask, and MetaMask is an Ethereum wallet, right? It can be used with pretty much any blockchain that supports the Ethereum virtual machine standard for programming. That's a lot of words. But at the end of the day, it's still a bit of a pain for most users to use a crypto wallet, to go through the whole process of moving fiat into a crypto exchange, buying Ethereum or Matic or some other token, and then interacting with all of these games. So the part of the challenge with Web3 gaming or crypto gaming, which is one part of GameFi, quite a dominant part of GameFi, is that the UX and the entire onboarding process for most average users or even gamers. So I have two boys, and I asked them to play Axie Infinity just to see how they respond, and then I asked them to play some of the other games, right? Krabada, and they hated all of them. So they spend the elder one spends like 8 hours a day on Xbox at times. But he really didn't like, and I'm not saying that's representative, but what I'm saying is that the UX of some of this GameFi is still pretty painful for the average gamer. So how do we, what's going on to address the UX issue and the safety issue around the UX?
Well, I think it's comparing Axie Infinity to some of the major games out there is kind of comparing like an early kind of simple civilization to the futuristic. It's been around for 2 years. We have to remember that. We have to remember that crypto has been, officially around like for 15 sort of years. And it's really, really early days for them to get that success. And this is about showing people that a decentralized network can work, where people can, well, in this case, play a game, but could also do any other task. And that could go back to the ecosystem. The ecosystem takes care of itself. Then we obviously have the whole kind of like experience of opening a wallet, noting down your key phrase, putting that key phrase somewhere that you will inevitably forget. And if you by this point haven't thrown your computer out of the window, then maybe you can sort of like get some sort of exchange, you get some sort of tokens. Of course, 15-year-old boys are not gonna have patience for that, But
I can tell you 46-year-old boys don't have patience for that. That's a different discussion, right?
Yeah, and people who work with it all day also sometimes run out of patience. So it's all about really giving it not too much time, but this will happen.
Right.
So crypto will be the wallet creation. And I already know a lot of games that we work with that basically the user never sees the crypto part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it allows for decentralization while not kind of frustrating the user.
Yeah, I think I've seen some examples where, let's say there is something called Sequence Wallet where they are making it much easier for the user to interact with games, and certain other smart contract type of wallets where the wallet is built into the game. There are also non-custodial games, right, where the cryptocurrency interaction part is abstracted from the user, and all of the assets are held by the game and internally accounted for by the game, and the user hands over custody to the game. So there are various experiments that are going on. And you're absolutely right? We're probably in the Pac-Man era GameFi, and Pac-Man was one hell of a game we still played, as opposed to the Call of Duty era of GameFi. But now we have seen, so one of the things that are you seeing any major gaming studios come into this space, like Epic Games or Universal or some of these other guys?
Yes, of course. I think Epic has created a decentralized protocol. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be a utility token or NFT. We have seen Microsoft going through with Photo, which is an absolutely fantastic game, completely decentralized. So it's definitely happening. Like, big studios are going into this, and they're going into it with big pockets and a lot of bravado. Even now, after it's sort of been a really hard year, you still see a lot of investments from bigger companies in this.
Matthias, what are you seeing in the industry?
Well, Yelena is definitely closer to the games industry than I ever would be. But even from my remote actually position, I would definitely say yes. But just like, again, I have to come back to one point. Don't underestimate the appetite for innovation on the banking side. And by the way, don't overestimate the appetite for innovation on the game side. We experienced some really very incumbent game kind of ecosystem, video game ecosystem stakeholders who are absolutely conservative and more like incumbent on the whole topic and fully declare saying, no, we don't want to have that. And we're going to stay away from that. And remember, I just think about, but forgiving me being the eldest on the call, I can't recall the name now, but when there was one company saying we're going to go into this, wasn't it Roblox actually? We're going to go into this, and then the users protested on it with the kind of same criticism, not just it's a scam, it's a Ponzi, and so on. And then they had to pull back massive, big time, right? So, well, I like the comparison actually that we are currently in the Pac-Man status or in the Pac-Man period. Pac-Man wasn't too bad. I still like it.
Pac-Man wasn't bad at all, right?
I was in a boarding school where we had one of the first Pac-Man playing desks actually, and we had long queues of pupils actually for the game, and the break in school was not long enough. So, but again, I have to see, and Yelena indicated it, there's a lot of money around, right? And we know from fintech, when there is money around to be invested, even that we might have a kind of cooling down phase currently, but it will come back. I am absolutely positive about this. And when the honeypots are big, you will have the bees, and this is exactly why it's going to happen. I'm absolutely sure. First of all, what I second can also share is that we see on a very small scale, but an increasing number of ex-bankers actually entering into the game environment, right?
Yep.
That is good or bad news. I don't know. Let us discuss that next week. Next year, I mean, sorry. But there you see already the transition at the borderlines, actually. So the borderlines are really breaking down. The demarcation lines are not that clear anymore. It is more like gray zone-ish, increasingly gray zone-ish on the border end, and we will see where it all comes, where it all goes actually. But I'm very very positive about it, that this is a sustainable development.
So on the other dimension, right? So we talked about first of all finance within games, and crypto is a big part of that. What about the gamification of the UX of finance, right? So we've seen it took 10 years to go from websites to mobile, and people were saying it's not happening, and then banks went mobile big time, especially led by the likes of neobanks like Revolut and Monzo and so on, and then it starts to happen. But is anyone doing anything about gamifying the day-to-day UX of finance?
Let me. We did a fantastic. Renata will remember. We did a fantastic podcast. I have to say, because I was moderating it on the topic of gamification versus games, and what are the demarcation lines between gamification and games, and what is the impact on the user behavior actually. And And to summarize that discussion in a nutshell, I have to say, and this is, of course, then my personal opinion, I have to say that I regard gamification actually to be quite dangerous within a real bank user experience. Why? Because gamification, and really in just one sentence, actually gives the user, the customer of a bank, the feeling that he or she is in a game, which by the definition of a game is a motivating, protected environment that does not harm or hurt you, right? But in a bank, actually, when you do a transaction on the market, it can be pretty dangerous because your 10K US dollar transaction, even if it's gamified in the UX, it's a 10K transaction. And the money you lose is gone, right? So this is not coins, not nothing, but it's real money, net earned money potentially that you lost then. But it looked nice, So that kind of very, very fundamental risk is actually not visible nor feelable anymore, and that might even lead you to even more risky decisions than you would do in a very neutral UX. So, when speaking about gamification, we have to have that in mind. And once we have it in mind and still can go for gamification, I'm fine.
Well, I think I've seen more of that in crypto exchanges kind of use cases than I've seen in regular banks.
Yeah,
it's like, trade 5,000 and get a crypto apple. Trade another 2 and then you get like a pair. In crypto we've seen it a lot, like on exchanges.
Yeah, and that is exactly only for increasing sales, right? This is it's not to give you a good game experience like within a video game, but it's only for increasing sales. And that I clearly have to say is very, very dangerous for the players and for the customers of such a platform. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think part of the challenge is, when Silicon Valley does gamification, they have a huge amount of data, and a lot of that data that they shouldn't have about us, right? Our day-to-day behavior, where we were, geolocation data, where we have been shopping, who our friends are, what sort of things we like, what sort of things we dislike. The Silicon Valley knows an awful lot about us. So when they are doing, gamification, they have all of this data that's not regulated. Now, the challenge for finance is that, you can't really use much of the user data at all. I mean, the finance is extremely heavily regulated, which means you can't build a lot of context, which is required for gamification. So this will be an interesting one to solve now. Whether for good or bad, Silicon Valley and gaming companies are coming in big time and are starting to bite into what's traditionally finance, especially led by crypto. So for good or for bad, I think we will start to see far more sophisticated technology and gamified experiences. Some will be good, some will be bad, some will be sustainable, some will be unsustainable. But the only way we progress is by trying things and making mistakes, and hopefully if Europe decides to regulate everything before it's even created, then people will just do it somewhere else. So
AJ, that would be for the first time that a regulator would be proactive. The history of regulation, right? The history of regulation is actually, and I was more than 20 years a regulated board member of a bank, of 2 banks I founded myself, right? And co-founded with the team. Right. The history of regulation is to be reactive, not proactive, and then overreactive.
Right? Yeah. We're seeing that in Europe with MiCA and some of the other travel rule compliance type of rules coming through. So we'll see how that goes. It's an inevitable reaction to of the immune system of the current architecture of economics and society. That's perfectly fine. We'll deal with it. But I think there's a lot of opportunity in this space. So what's the message for our fintech community? That's our core audience. If you had to close this with one message around both GameFi and gamification of finance, what would you ask our fintech audience of innovators and policymakers and banks to do?
So, yes, the message is, my core message to fintech and my core message to the whole financial services industry is, don't regard video games to be a niche. You finance guys are the niche. Video games is a much bigger market with more promising opportunities for future than banking and financial services ever will have. So you are the niche. Video games is a marketplace.
That's a really powerful insight, right? That consumers are the market, and it's financial services, which is a niche activity amongst the millions of things that people do in their day-to-day lives, and especially with games, right? So the gamers, it's $180 billion industry, but it's the customer is just about everyone. So that's a really powerful insight, Matthias. Thank you for that. And Yelena, any final words of advice to our fintech audience?
Any addition to that? Well, I completely agree. I think there's so much happening in this space. There's so much happening in crypto, and there is so much happening in gaming. As you said, Matthias, there is a lot of things going on, even for us who work in the industry. There's just news all the time. And I think whoever is kind of not following that will be left behind. This is the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Last question is, how can our audience find more about you and the work you're doing? What's the best way for them to find out?
Well, I have an Instagram account on CryptoKitana. I do loads of different features and news on cryptocurrency. So that's probably the easiest way to find me if you want some news and just comments on NFT space and the latest in crypto. I am also the CMO of Quest Citizens. So if you are listening to this and thinking, I really want to be a part of a really cool NFT collection, please get in touch. We have whitelist post allocations still, I think. So there is room for that. And as a utility, you get like privileges on the Quest Hub, which is a platform where you can promote your GameFi project or your NFT project to thousands of people.
Okay, thanks. And Matthias?
Yeah, well, first of all, I need to say, Yelena, we need to stay in contact, and I need to introduce you to Mogaland and what we're doing there, because I think we can kind of join forces there, create joint forces. Yeah, because what I learned about your platform actually sounds super interesting to us, and then by saying you will find me on LinkedIn, I'm identifying myself to be a more incumbent person, obviously.
LinkedIn, who uses that anymore?
I'm so happy. I'm not saying you will find me on Facebook. I lost my login credentials.
Look at all the boomer, as my kids tell me. It's boomer. I'm a boomer. Right.
Yeah, but that would be it. No, we will. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of news with Tradelite and in particular Mogaland for coming up over the rest of the year.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
all the announcements from Tradelite and CryptoKitana and Quest. That all the best with your NFT collection. About me, just look for Chain Yoda on Twitter, and if you want to see too many tweets, and to find out more about Polygon Studios, please just Google Polygon Studios. In fact, it's most of the world's crypto games are on the Polygon network, and
we work really closely with Polygon Studios. Well,
see. So yeah, so we can tell you all you need to know, and I think we have lots of GameFi resources to learn about GameFi on the Polygon Studios website as well.
Yeah, of course. I know. We had a show with Polygon Studios, I think, about 3 weeks ago. They do a podcast as well. So that's yeah. No, we do. Of course, we work quite closely with them because, as you said, there's a lot of games, a lot of innovation on Polygon. Our collection is based on Solana, so we're going on Magic Eden the 15th of September.
That's all right, Kröner. We're not going to hold that against you. So.
Hopefully. No, so we already had allocations, but the main point, we had a lot of guilds. We had a platform for guilds, and then after this sort of market was been really unstable, we'll open up for NFTs as well. And we saw loads of projects, coming in, promoting and kind of using different things. We have various services. You can find out more on the website. But with the NFT collection, you can you can do more things basically on the website when it comes to NFT promotion.
Thank you so much for to our wonderful guests, Yelena Kensborn and Matthias Kroener, for joining us to educate and share their expertise and views on this wonderful space of GameFi. This is Ajit, your host, Ajit Tripathi, episode number 142. And hopefully you will find all of finance far more enjoyable and useful and educational through this experience of gaming. And signing off, have a wonderful week ahead.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Europe, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with FinTech Stage. Don't forget to tweet us out, shout out, or post to the team at Breaking Banks EU on Twitter. If there's something or someone you'd like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next week on Breaking Banks Europe.